Tonight, we journey not through grand battles or sweeping legends, but through the slower rhythm of medieval castle life. The kind you rarely see in movies. Not kings on thrones or princesses in towers, but the damp corridors, the creaking timbers, and the cold that seem to breathe through the very stones. We won't be rushing through halls or charging up battlements. No, we'll walk quietly, unhurried, through these ancient places. We'll see what it was really like to live within walls built not for comfort but for survival. Imagine the weight of the wooden gate creaking closed at dusk. Imagine the stillness that follows, broken only by a distant cough, the rustle of straw, or the call of a watchman on the wall. This is the story of castles, not as fairy tale homes, but as real places where people lived, endured, and waited. And we begin, as all days in the medieval world began, with the chill of early morning and the silence of stone. Let us step quietly inside. What living in a castle was really like. You awaken not to the warmth of sun-drenched linen, but to the muffled echo of footsteps above you on stone. The air is cold, not brisk or fresh, but deeply cold, the kind that sinks into your bones and stays there. The castle is not a cosy retreat, but a vast stone shell that holds the weather as much as it holds people, and in winter, it holds the cold fiercely. You lie on a wooden frame with ropes for support, covered in woolen blankets that never quite stop the drafts. Beneath you, a mattress of straw, slightly flattened. The scent of old fabric and the faint must of mildew always present. You can hear water dripping somewhere, and you know, without needing to open your eyes, that your breath is faintly visible in the morning light. The room, if it can be called that, has high ceilings, rough walls of grey stone and a narrow slit of a window. It lets in light but not warmth. Glass is rare, costly. If you are lucky, a thin oiled cloth has been stretched across the opening. More likely it is simply open to the air. A servant brings a basin of water, not warm, not heated, simply carried up from the courtyard well. You splash your face with it, not to feel refreshed but to wake up fully. There's no soap as you know it. Instead, perhaps ash or sand rubbed between your palms. Now dressed, you step into the corridor. The floors are made of stone, cold and unforgiving. Slippers are worn but thin-soled. Every step carries the quiet slap of leather on rock. The halls are dim, lit by torches or candles set in iron sconces. Their light is warm but limited. Shadows crowd the corners. The air smells faintly of smoke and damp wool. There are no bathrooms, only chamber pots in private rooms, and perhaps a small room with a wooden bench and a hole, the garderobe. It drops down along the outer wall. The scent lingers despite efforts with herbs or rushes. Cleanliness is different here, measured in odour tolerated, not avoided. Meals are served in the great hall, a long room with a high ceiling and banners that stir slightly when the wind snakes through the gaps in the wall. The lord and lady sit at the high table. Everyone else falls below them in rank: knights, stewards, squires, cooks, and servants. You do not sit where you wish. Everything is determined by hierarchy: where you eat, what you eat, when you eat. Food is not extravagant, not unless it is a feast. Daily meals consist of brown bread, a bit of cheese, a stew perhaps, and ale. Always ale. Water is rarely trusted. You eat with fingers or a knife. Forks are a rare novelty, if they exist at all in your world. As the day goes on, the work begins. Even for those of status, idleness is rare. There are accounts to tend to, repairs to supervise, disputes among the servants to resolve. For everyone else, labour. Endless labour. Hauling firewood, turning spits in the kitchen, scrubbing floors, carrying water. The castle is a hungry machine. It demands constant maintenance. For those who train for battle, the sound of swords clashing in the yard echoes through the stones, but not everyone bears arms. Many tend animals, spin wool, clean armour, or prepare meals. A living fortress requires dozens, sometimes hundreds of people to keep it functioning. As evening nears, candles are lit. They give off more smoke than light. Wax is precious. Most use tallow, with a smell that clings to everything. You huddle near the hearth if allowed. Only the great hall and lord's chambers are truly heated. Elsewhere, the cold returns. Always the cold. Night falls early. With little light, there is little to do. The castle grows quiet, save for the guards on night watch. They pace the battlements slowly, peering out into the mist, listening for distant hooves or the creak of an enemy siege engine. Sleep comes not from peace, but exhaustion. You lie once more on the straw-filled mattress, listening to the wind whistle through cracks in the stone. Perhaps a rat skitters near the corner. Perhaps a door creaks on its own. You pull the blanket tighter and pray for no emergencies in the night. No fire, no illness, no attack. This is life in a castle, not a fairy tale, but a long rhythm of routine, discomfort, duty, and waiting. The stone, the cold, the silence, they are constants. And now, as we leave this part of the journey behind, let us descend deeper into the heart of castle life, to a moment of terror, endurance, and siege, a place where the walls that held life also trapped it. The siege of Rochester Castle, a slow collapse behind stone. Let us now leave the quiet rhythm of daily life and turn our gaze to a moment when that rhythm was shattered, when the castle, that vast stony shell of routine and hierarchy, became a prison, a trap, a place where time slowed, food dwindled, and every heartbeat echoed louder against the walls. Let us drift back to the early winter of the year 1215. The castle is Rochester. It rises quietly beside the River Medway in southern England. Not the grandest, nor the most famous, but strong. Tall stone towers, thick walls, a fortified keep, built to endure. And yet, as with all fortresses, it was never invulnerable. Only a matter of time, of patience, of pressure. The air is damp and the sky low with grey. Outside the walls, the army of King John has arrived, a king known for his bitterness, his cunning, and his failures. This is the same King John who would, under pressure, soon sign the Magna Carta, though he would never intend to honour it. Now he lays siege to his own people. Within the castle, rebel barons and loyal knights wait. Perhaps 100 or more. They believe they can hold the walls, and for a time they do. They pour water down from the battlements. They drop stones and fire arrows. They hold the gate. They pray. And outside the siege begins. Not with explosions, not with thunder, but with waiting. Siege warfare is not a fast affair. It is a slow, grinding pressure, a test of endurance and will. It begins with cutting off supplies. No food in, no hope out. The castle becomes a sealed box. Inside, every meal becomes thinner, every loaf stretched farther. Salted meats, hard bread, whatever can last. But it won't last forever. King John does not attack with fury. He attacks with time, with the construction of siege engines, great towers of timber, heavy catapults, and wooden rams. They creak and groan as they are built piece by piece within sight of the walls. A psychological pressure as much as a physical one. The first attacks target the outer walls. Stones fly, timber shatters, men rush, only to be driven back by boiling oil and arrow fire from above. It becomes clear the castle won't fall from the outside, so John orders something different. The miners arrive. Tunnels are dug beneath the great stone keep. The goal, to collapse its foundations. Quiet work, almost invisible. Day after day, men chip at earth beneath the surface, and when the tunnel is ready, it is packed with kindling and pig fat, the most combustible material they could find. The fire is lit. The explosion is not one of thunder, but of structure. A rumble, a sagging. A side of the keep slouches, cracks appear. The tower does not fall, but it weakens. A corner sags like old bread left too long in the rain. Still, the defenders do not yield. They retreat into what remains. They barricade doors. They ration food. Now the rats are not unwelcome. They are meat. Water is carefully measured. Silence becomes a sign of life. Any sound risks giving away movement to the enemy outside. In time, the siege becomes starvation. Bones protrude, bellies swell, conversation fades to murmurs, and the air inside the keep becomes thick, with smoke, with breath, with despair. Outside, King John is growing impatient. Winter is setting in. Campaigning in cold and rain is costly. But finally, after weeks, some say nearly 2 months, the defence falters. Not in a grand collapse, but in quiet surrender. The defenders are too weak to hold swords, too starved to lift shields. The gate is opened. They emerge not as warriors, but as shadows. But this is no moment of mercy. The king wants a message sent. Some defenders are hanged, others imprisoned. A castle can fall, walls can crack. Loyalty too is fragile, and the castle, it remains, damaged, charred, but not gone. Over time it will be repaired, rebuilt, resettled. But those who lived through the siege never forget the hunger, the stillness, the waiting. Sieges in medieval life were not eruptions of sudden war but slow suffocations. The castle, once a symbol of strength, became a place of helplessness. Stone that once kept enemies out now kept the hopeless in. And now, as the smoke of that bitter season fades into memory, let us wander away from fire and famine. Let us turn instead to the very architecture of fear, to the details built into every castle to deter, to delay, to defend. Let us explore the secret language of stone, of moats, murder holes, and machicolations. Moats, murder holes, and machicolations. The castle as a weapon. You've walked through the chill corridors. You've waited in the shadow of siege. Now let us step back, not in time, but in space, and see the castle not as a home, nor as a prison, but as a weapon in stone. For castles were not merely residences, they were deliberate machines of war, and everything, from their bridges to their towers, was designed with one quiet goal: to survive attack, start at the edge, the moat. Not always filled with water as romantic paintings suggest. More often, it was a deep trench. Dry or muddy, it was the first obstacle to any invader. To descend into a moat was to lose momentum, to become exposed. Archers waited above. Stones were ready. The sides of the moat were steep and slippery. And should there be water, it was not clean. It was stagnant, dark, and often filled with waste from the very castle it protected. Crossing it meant approaching the drawbridge, a wooden plank thick enough to support horses but narrow, creaking and temporary. At any moment it could rise. It was more than a bridge. It was a gate, a signal, a heartbeat of control. Up, safety, down, exposure. And just beyond it, the gatehouse, a structure more complex than it appeared. First came the portcullis, a heavy grid of iron and timber suspended overhead. It could drop in seconds, and once down, it was nearly impossible to lift. But more than that, a trap. Because between the outer gate and the inner door lay a space, enclosed on all sides, and above that space, hidden in the ceiling, were openings. Innocent, square holes in the stone. These were murder holes. Through them, defenders could pour boiling water, heated sand, oil, or stones. Imagine standing there, the walls rising on both sides, the iron gate behind you, the thick wooden door ahead, and suddenly the sound above. A hiss, a drop, and no way to escape. Further up the walls were machicolations, a word that whispers like Latin but means something simple. Gaps between the stone corbels at the tops of walls or towers. Defenders could drop projectiles directly downward without exposing themselves. They didn't have to lean. The wall did the leaning for them. And the walls themselves? Not smooth. They were often irregular, designed to catch ladders and break rhythm. Defenders at the top had the advantage of height, of vision, but also the ability to pace. Wall walks, narrow and protected by crenellations, those classic notched battlements, allowed archers and watchmen to move, fire, and duck. Each corner was deliberate, every turn an opportunity to delay, to break the line, to exhaust the enemy. Inside, stairs spiraled clockwise upwards. Why? Because most attackers would be right-handed. In a clockwise stairwell, their sword hand was blocked by the central column, while the defender descending the stairs had a full swing. Even small openings were calculated. Arrow slits, long vertical slits that flared inward, allowed an archer a wide field of vision while exposing only a sliver of their body to those below. And at the very top, the keep, a last resort, a final redoubt, with narrow entrances, thick doors, high walls and provisions. If all else failed, the defenders could retreat into this final chamber and wait. Often it was square or rectangular, but sometimes round, harder to undermine, harder to collapse. But this weapon, this fortress, came at a cost. To build such a structure took years, hundreds of men, stone quarried and carted often from miles away, timber cut and shaped, mortar mixed with lime and sand, and the result? A place designed not for beauty but for endurance, for resistance, for fear. A castle was not only a place of safety, it was a warning, a statement. To those who approached, this is not for you, stay back. Even its silhouette, the jagged outline against the sky, was meant to inspire awe and hesitation. And yet, within those walls, people lived, slept, worked. Children played in courtyards shadowed by murder holes. Cooks prepared bread beneath battlements. Life continued quietly beneath layers of looming defence. Because the castle was not just a weapon, it was a contradiction, both shield and burden, both home and fortress, both sanctuary and trap. And now, as we step away from the stone geometry of fear, let us move towards something warmer, a contrast to the cold floors and stern walls. Let us step into the great hall. Let us sit beside flickering hearths. Let us hear the clink of goblets and the soft hush of silk sleeves. Let us feast with the nobility and uncover what every dish, every bite, every glance quietly said about the world they lived in. Feasting with the nobility, power on a platter. Step now, slowly, into warmth. You pass through a high wooden door, and before you stretches the great hall and the heart of the castle, and the place where stone finally gives way to firelight. Here, the air is softer, warmer, heavy with the scent of roasted meats, candle wax and pressed herbs hung from beams above. The hall echoes gently, not with the cries of war, but with the murmurs of voices, the occasional laugh, the rustle of fabric and wood on stone. This is not a feast of abundance, it is a feast of hierarchy. It begins at the high table, a long wooden board set on a raised platform at the far end of the room. Upon it sit the lord and lady of the castle, sometimes their honoured guests, bishops, visiting nobles. They face the room, not as participants, but as watchers. Their view stretches across the heads of everyone below. It is not just about eating, it is about being seen. The dishes arrive not all at once, but in procession, 12, 15, sometimes more. They do not eat all of it. Much of it is for display, for spectacle. Roasted swans, feathers reapplied after cooking, pies shaped like castles, boars' heads with citrus in their jaws, spices, cinnamon, saffron, cloves, not for taste alone, but for power. To possess spice in medieval Europe was to declare wealth without speaking a word. Beneath the high table, rows of lesser tables stretch outward. Knights, stewards, favoured guests and visiting clergy eat here. They are served by pages, often young boys of noble birth, who carry dishes with care. Dropping one is not just clumsy, it is political. Service is not servitude, it is apprenticeship in hierarchy. The lower down the hall you sit, the plainer your food. While the lords taste sweetmeats, you may have pottage, a thick soup of grains and vegetables. Perhaps a little meat, if you're fortunate. Bread is shared, but its whiteness varies. Fine white bread for the top, coarse brown rye for the rest. Even the texture of bread separates the powerful from the common. No forks yet, just knives and fingers. Etiquette is strict. One must not place the entire hand on a piece of meat. One must not blow on food. One must not bite into bread, but break it. Napkins are cloth shared at the table. Plates may be wood, or for the wealthier, pewter. In earlier times, a trencher, a flat round of stale bread, was used as a plate, later discarded or given to the poor. The music begins, soft strings, perhaps a flute or a rebec. Not for dancing, not yet, just for background. A lilt to fill the air as course after course emerges from the kitchen. Venison stews, roasted songbirds, tarts with almond paste, stewed fruits spiced with ginger. The drinks are ale, wine, or mead. Water is rarely touched. And here too everything means something. To host a feast was not mere hospitality. It was politics, a demonstration of control, a way to earn loyalty, to impress neighbours, to intimidate rivals. Even what was left uneaten was part of the spectacle. Waste was a luxury. Bones tossed to dogs beneath the table, crumbs brushed into rushes on the floor. But beyond the food, the hall itself whispered messages. The tapestries that line the walls speak of lineage, of battles won, of marriages made. The crest above the hearth declares allegiance. Every detail, from the salt placed near the lord to the cushion beneath his feet, reinforces a world ordered from top to bottom. For women, the feast was both opportunity and burden. Ladies of the house oversaw its smooth execution, but were watched closely. A misstep, a spilled cup, a wrinkled gown, a glance too long, could ripple across reputations. For unmarried daughters, it was a stage of possibility. For widows, a test of continued relevance. Outside this glow of status and performance, the castle at large remains still. In the kitchens, the servants clean in silence. In the stables, horses doze. In the towers, guards lean against their spears and wait for the night to end. Back in the hall, the final course is served. Candied fruits, soft cheese, a bowl of warm milk with nutmeg. Conversation softens. The fire sinks low. And as the feast ends, the nobles retreat to their chambers. The tables are cleared. The rushes swept. What remains is a scent. Faint traces of cinnamon and smoke, the quiet reminder of an evening designed not just to nourish, but to remind everyone of their place. The castle falls quiet once again. The firelight flickers against cold stone, and the long breath of the medieval night resumes. Let us now together take one last walk, a quiet conclusion to this journey through towers and tunnels, feasts and fear. Let us return to the present and to sleep.